in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for attending this Autodesk AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT Introduction to Printing, Plotting, and Layouts webinar. My name is Volker Coco, and I am happy to welcome you here. Happy to see all you guys here. With me today is Christina Davis, who will be moderating the session and throwing a few polls at you a little later. Well, actually in a few minutes, we'll begin with those. She'll also be here to keep track of any questions you may have about the topic that we are presenting. Christina?
Hello. Thank you for having me.
We are so glad to have you here. Christina is she is amazing with the AutoCAD product, so I'm happy to have her here assisting today and fielding any questions. I hope everybody can hear me okay. If not, or you're having any kinds of problems, I guess please let us know in the chat window. The first thing we'd like to do is throw an initial poll at you here, just to see how many of you have attended one of our AMA sessions previously. For those who don't know, AMA is Ask Me Anything, and that's basically what we're happy to do, is have you ask anything about this topic as we're presenting it or after the fact. So it looks like about 50% of you have been here one or more times, 64%. And some of you have lost track. I love that. Okay. Well, I am really happy to hear and see that you've come back. And I hope this session will be useful as well. So thank you for that poll, Christina. All righty. So before we get started, a little housekeeping. Some of you are used to this. Again, feel free to leave questions in the chat window. We will answer these after, maybe even during the session as time allows. We'll have definitely have a Q&A after the presentation. And then we'd also like you to check out our landing page, which lists our upcoming webinars, as well as posting of the recordings for previous webinars. And Christina will be putting this URL in our chat window for you to copy and paste. I'm trying to drag it over to the screen here. There we go. This is our landing page. And we'll discuss this portion here a little later, but we do have a feedback page as well. So please feel free to post additional questions after the webinar on that page as well. Or if you have any thoughts about upcoming topics you'd like to hear about, make use of that feedback page. We do try to visit it. I did visit a little late last time, but managed to answer a couple of questions on there. Actually, it was only one. I was lying. Only one question, but I did get an answer out to that, and I'll be happy to answer more questions. All right, so having said that, one more thing I'd like to point out. This webinar, this entire series is brought to you by Autodesk Product Support. And we just want to make you aware of, well, how to use some features of the product, that some of those features are there, but at the same time, make you aware that we do have resources available for you other than just, creating a support case. For example, our Autodesk Knowledge Network. The URL is at the top there. Christina will be posting that in the chat window. And those particular links you're seeing there are articles that have been posted as of this week in for new solutions, new how-tos, and just things to be aware of, things that might assist you as a CAD user or a CAD manager. So having said that, gotten all that house cleaning out of the way, let's talk about plotting. Plotting, and I should have put layouts up there, which is what this session is about. But what is the difference? Printing and plotting. We hear about this all the time. So in the past, the terms printing and plotting would refer to specific devices. So for a printer, in the past, text was about the only thing that you could really output from a printer, and large format plotters would accommodate vector graphics. And those terms are now pretty much interchangeable. So we'll be referring to these either as printing or as plotting or print, plot, whatever. It's the same thing. That's the bottom line. In AutoCAD, we can plot from two different environments. One is the Model Layout tab, and one is the Paper Space Layout tab. Model is how we used to have to print. So before Release 11, when Paperspace was introduced, we only had the model environment available, and if we wanted to show things at different scale factors in a print or plot, we would then have to create a copy of that, scale it to whatever size we wanted for the detail, and it just involved a lot more work and quite a bit of math. Paperspace allows for flexibility in plotting. By that I mean we can have multiple viewports. Each one of these viewports can have different scale factors. Initially, when Paperspace was introduced, we had the ability to make 8 different viewports. We can now have up to 64 within a drawing layout. Resources of your graphics card and your RAM will dictate how much can be seen at one time, but all of them would plot. In addition to that, we can have up to 255 layouts in an AutoCAD drawing. This includes model. Okay, and you will always need to have at least one model and one layout tab available at any time. The beauty of plotting from a layout is that once we have our viewports in there, our annotations, we can just plot that at 1-to-1. So a layout basically represents a drawing sheet. And this is where we would have our drawing border, a title block, our viewports, any general notes, labels, possibly dimensions and other text, as well as tables and schedules. So it is basically used for the plotting environment. A model layout, you could incorporate any of those items, obviously. Along with layouts, in order to plot, we have other tools, the Plotter Manager being one of these. This lists all of your plotter configuration files. Basically, a plotter configuration file is a PC3 file. A PC3 is generated from a printer driver installed by the software for that printer or plotter, or it could be a printer driver for something like Adobe Acrobat or Snagit, anything that has a software driver for printing. The Plotter Manager, and I probably could have worded that a little better, but the Plotter Manager actually has a tool called the Add a Plotter Wizard, which allows you to create these PC3 files. In addition to the Plotter Manager, we can create what are called page setups. When you create a layout or a plotter settings, I should say, anytime you create a plotter setting, you can save those settings to what is called a page setup. These page setups can then be used and reused in other drawings. And basically, there are tools there to import and export those page setups. Along with the page setups, we have what are called plot styles. Plot styles are dependent upon which drawing template you open. If you've looked at the new command, using that to start a new drawing file, you may have noticed some of the default templates. Some of them have a named plot style appended to the name of the template itself, and this would be an STB or named plot style. Color-dependent plot styles, our CTB extensions, are based on color. Okay, so we would apply a plot style to the entire drawing. A named plot style can be applied to an object or a layer or the entire drawing. We'll cover those briefly. A lot of this stuff, actually, we will cover briefly, give you a good overview of how things work. And I'd like you to make sure to participate in a poll we'll have at the end of this session, where I'd like to see about what topics that we've covered today should we expand upon for additional details. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is get into AutoCAD.
So Volker, while you're setting up, I'd be interested to know who we have watching in our audience. You mind if I throw a poll up about
Nope.
what kind of roles we have viewing?
It's a great idea. Thank you, Christina.
Great, so we just have a poll up just to get a feel for all of you that are watching in the audience what your role is, because obviously your role at your company kind of controls how much involvement you'll have with setting up plotting or versus just using plotting. So right now it looks like we have majority of CAD technicians and designers, with also a strong showing from the CAD managers. And the CAD managers and self-employed, all of the above, about equal. So
Well, it's quite.
There's that poll. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. That's quite a variety. So, yeah, this good glossy overview then will definitely apply to most of you here. So, Christina, can everybody see my AutoCAD screen?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so we'll begin, first of all, taking a look at the model environment here, and we can easily just go into our drawings here and select the plot command from up here, and clicking on that will bring up the plot dialog. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on plotting from model space. The concept is the same as with paper space, except that we do have to take into consideration our scale factor. And because everything in model space, of course, is drawn in real-world units. And if we have something that is 20 feet long, that's not going to fit on a sheet of paper. We're going to have to do some scaling in order to make that fit onto that sheet of paper. We don't change the physical size of objects. We just do the calculation, tell AutoCAD what we want to scale it to, and it squeezes those objects onto a sheet of paper. So this is the plot dialog, and in a moment you'll see that clicking on this little options button here, which expands it, you'll see that this is going to be very similar to a tool called the Page Setup Manager, which I'll be focused more on. I'm going to cancel out of this guy for right now. Let's take a look here. We have, like I said, the plot command. There's also a plot preview that can be shown up here. I cannot recall if that's a default or if I changed it, but the quick access toolbar allows me to quickly add that up here to my toolbar. Other plotting tools are located here under the publish command and the print command. So here we have some things like send to a 3D print service. Here we have options to plot, batch plot, our plot preview, plot and publish details. That's a text file created on your hard drive. Page setup, manage plotters. So this is the add a plotter wizard and our page setup manager. We can also manage and edit our plot styles, which we'll show you a bit. Here's our edit plot style tables. And so all these tools are easily available. You can quickly type plot at the command line, and that will take you into the plot command as well. I'm going to switch over to a drawing, though, that has a little bit more stuff in it. Okay, and again, I could easily plot this here from model space, but I'm going to go into working with layouts. In a default drawing, switching back one more time, AutoCAD has the model, layout 1 and layout 2 tabs available for you. Again, you can easily delete these or add to them. In this particular drawing, I've gone ahead and renamed those layouts to A size and D size. If we take a look, switching back again to drawing 1, at layout 1 here, let's talk about the layout itself. What we have here, this is called a viewport. A viewport can be scaled to show your objects at different scale factors, 1/8 inch equals a foot, 1/4 inch equals a foot, etc. This area you see right here, this border, this hidden or dashed line, this is the printable or plottable area of the sheet of paper as dictated by the printer driver. Okay, so those are the boundaries, the maximum boundaries that you can go by. And it is just a visual thing here. Okay, we can actually tweak our sheet sizes a bit differently, and in some cases maybe we don't want to use this as a guide. Maybe we already know our configuration, but this entire sheet of paper is just a visual representation for you to see what things are going to look like in a what you see is what you get type of feel. Okay, I'm going to right mouse click over the command line right now. I'm going to go to options, and under plot and publish, oh, I'm sorry, under display, where I was at, sorry about that, here we can turn off those visuals if we choose to do so. I prefer to leave them on. It is nice. It's a lot nicer than it was back in the day when we had to do everything from the command line. Under plot and publish, we can also set some default printers. Be aware this is not a default for any drawing you start. It's a default printer for any drawing that has been converted from a third-party application or that was a pre-release 2000 AutoCAD 2000 DWG format. It does not apply this just to any new drawing you create. Here we can also go through some additional settings. We don't have time to go through each one of these. Be aware they're there. And remember that AutoCAD Help will take you to all the information you need about these particular items. All you have to do is click on that help. It takes you right to that spot. I'm going to cancel out of this. I'm going to go back to my house drawing here and switching over to the D-sized. So this is more of a visual for you right here. You'll see that the title block that I have here has been made to accommodate the sheet size for this layout. All right, so the first thing I'd want to do here is see this real-world drawing, okay? So let's take a look at this here. If I were to measure, I'm going to just type DI, enter at the command line. That'll give me the distance command, and that tells me that this is 32 feet long. Way too long for even a D-sized sheet of paper. I'm going to go over here to the D-size, and what I'm going to do is create what are called viewports. In these viewports, you'll also notice once I switch to this layout that we now have a layout tab. And this layout tab has tools for me to create these viewports. And I create different types. I encourage you to experiment with these. I'm just going to use rectangular right now. And note the command line. It has some options here, on, off, fit. Fit would create a viewport going from the plottable area that the printer driver determines. So from lower left to upper right. I realize I'm lower right there, but upper right, lower left, upper right. What I'm going to do is look, I want to create 2 viewports. So I'll type 2, enter, and I'm just going to pick a point about, it's still prompting me for vertical here, sorry. So I'll just hit enter. And then it says fit or specify a first corner. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and specify first corner here. Now in these 2 viewports, there is no real-life scale assigned here. This is an arbitrary scale, just allows the objects to fit into that viewport. Viewports, think of them as windows, for looking out of a window inside a building. You're in a building, look out a window. The closer you get to the window, the more you can see. And that's what viewports are. By making a viewport active, the closer I get to it, I can see more or I can see less. Stepping back, I see less. Closer, I see more, and so forth. Yeah, that's probably the best example I can think of is a window to the world. What I can do, though, is assign a different scale factor. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm just going to go ahead and make this active. Now, I double-clicked within the window to make it active, but there is a status bar icon here for model or paper, and this allows me to switch back and forth. I'm going to go ahead and set the scale factor. Instead of having to do math, which I'm not going to go into, but in the past we did have to do some math, some calculations. Probably for the long-time users, you probably had a cheat sheet, okay? But I'm just going to go ahead and set a scale factor the lazy way. And in this case, I'll use an 1/8 inch equals a foot. And that allows me to scale this properly. Now on this one here, this viewport, I want to have a little bit more of a detail. Okay, so I'm actually just going to grab the grips here. I'm going to resize this a little bit. And making the viewport active, I'm going to go ahead and set it to a scale factor of 1/4 inch equals a foot. Yeah. Now, when I pan like this, everything remains as I want it to be. This is where you need to be careful. If I were to zoom in and out, here's my scale factor, 1/4 inch equals a foot down here, right? When I zoom in and out, I lose that scale factor. So one of the things we can do to avoid this, there's several things we can do. We could save a named view. But even easier is to just set that scale factor, double-click the paper space environment. Now I'm going to select these viewports, and either using the Properties palette or by right mouse clicking, I can go ahead and lock these viewports so that they remain as I set them up. Okay, so that is the short and sweet of creating viewports in a layout. Christina,
Yes.
Can we get a poll on if people work with these layouts or for plotting?
Absolutely. So the poll is launched.
Yeah,
And while we're getting those poll votes, I did have a question, Volker.
Okay.
So viewports are really cool. We saw what they can do with scale, but I've received drawings in the past where somebody has taken their entire plan in model space and maybe copied it 2 or 3 or 4 times for all the different scales that they want. Is that cool too? Is there any reason why I wouldn't want to do that?
Well, I guess it's cool if it gets the job done, right? I mean, a very good question, first of all. You know, there's so many different ways to do things in AutoCAD, but why copy them when you can use viewports to control how things are displayed? If I'm understanding the question, you know, we can show different representations of an object in a viewport. Is this what we're getting at, Christina?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so if I go into a viewport here, and let's say there are certain things I want to see or don't want to see in here. So for example, let's see this here. What is this? This is a fireplace. I really don't want to see this in this detail. So what I'm going to do is go into the layer manager, and I'm just going to type LA because it's faster. I apologize if that throws people off. And under this fireplace, I'm going to go ahead and just turn it off, freeze it in this particular viewport. We have these columns here. Viewport freeze, new viewport. Any new viewport I create would freeze if I selected this. In this case, I'm just going to freeze the current viewport. All right, and then I'll go ahead and close this now. I could leave it open, but now I don't have that appearing in that viewport. So there was no reason to make any copies or create duplicate objects. I can just show the things I want to show in one viewport.
So more flexibility with these than...
Yeah.
Unless, of course, you want like a 500 megabyte drawing, then by all means.
Exactly. One of the things... Yeah, and this is one of the things. We could spend all day talking about printing and plotting and layouts. There is so much involved in that. So this is definitely a separate topic. But it looks like 5% of you just press print.
That means they have awesome CAD managers.
Exactly.
Everything's set up.
Exactly. And that is, for all you CAD managers out there, kudos. If you can make it that easy, that's wonderful. And that's the thing. Template files, you have things set up. You may have scripts, list routines, a great CAD manager, or maybe you are that CAD manager. You know what you're doing. That's awesome. And I see a lot of people still plot from model. There's nothing wrong with that, because if you have a 2D drawing, say an electrical wiring diagram, what do you need that for? You don't need to worry about creating different scale factors and such. Model works just fine, and quite a few paper space users. Okay, good deal. Thank you. Let us now move on, because I'm burning time here. And we will now talk about the plotter manager quickly, because in order to plot this, I have this set up. I have it looking the way I want it to. Okay, I'd probably put more work into it, but for demonstration purposes, I have it looking the way I want to. Actually, maybe I'll backtrack because I forgot to mention this. When you're creating viewports, everybody's different. Some people like to see the viewports, others don't. And going into the layer manager, in the past, what we would do is we would create the viewports, and then we would go ahead and maybe freeze that viewport, or we would go ahead and turn it off, or some people even do both. With AutoCAD Release 12, there was a layer introduced called def points for your dimensions. This was a great layer. You could put stuff on it, and it wouldn't plot the stuff on the layer. Technical verbiage, right? But if you placed your objects on that layer, they wouldn't plot. So we would use that for viewports quite often. Nowadays, I don't do that anymore. I either create a layer called viewports or vports. And what we can do is we can make any layer in AutoCAD not plot. That's what this plot icon column is for. So you'll see both of these are set to not plot, and that's the layer I've placed those viewports on. I can still see them in the drawing, but they aren't going to show, okay, on my final output. And if I do want them to show, all I have to do is make that layer a plottable layer. So something good to know about. All right, so let's say we have it looking the way we want. We now need to plot it. Well, what device are we going to plot that to? All right, you probably already have your printers and plotters set up. Somebody set them up for you. Maybe you've set them up yourself. If you haven't, we can use any system driver installed on Windows to plot. All right. We can also modify these drivers quite a bit by using what is called the plotter manager. And the plotter manager is basically a tool, a folder which contains plot styles and what are called plotter configuration files. These PC3 files are created using a tool called the Add a Plotter Wizard. And each one of these is just a software version of perhaps maybe a physical driver that we have installed. It allows us to tweak that driver a little more than we could in Windows. Maybe we don't have the permissions to tweak the driver because it's on a server. Okay, so we can create a PC3 which can be modified. We can, and I will show you how that looks in a moment. So the Add a Plotter Wizard, just to briefly go through it, allows me to create this easily. I can use existing plot configuration files. Selecting from my computer allows me to configure an HDI driver. And this is a driver that is specific for a plotter. We can also select from a network plotter server and create that PC3 file, or create one for a system printer. I'm going to go ahead and select System Printer and click Next. And I'll just use this particular driver I have installed. It is on a network, but it is System Printer driver. I'm just briefly going to go through this here. I could import a previous plotter configuration file here, or choose a particular plot style, but I'm just going to click Next. I'm going to leave the name the same, click Next, and here I can edit that configuration. We'll go into that outside of this dialog in a moment. Sometimes you may have to calibrate your plotter. Maybe it got bumped in shipping and things got tweaked, or maybe other settings need to be modified. Here we can do that as well. That's all there is to this Add a Plotter Wizard. But it does allow us to create these PC3 files, which we can modify. Let's take a look at one of the software PC3 files. This is a driver installed by AutoCAD. And basically creates a PDF file. And you'll see that we can determine what settings we want to modify here. So I want to maybe change merge control for my line work. Maybe I want to add a custom paper size. I can easily do that here. I can modify the printable area of existing paper sizes, and the DWG to PDF has just about every paper size in there. And because of that, maybe you want to filter some of those sizes because you don't use them. Okay, maybe you just use imperial, not metric, so you don't need to see all those. A lot of options here. I encourage you to explore this. That is a PC3 file. And again, just one of many devices we can use. Note the path. This can be redirected in the Options dialog under the Files tab. So you could place your PC3 files on a server. I'm going to go ahead and click Close on this. So now what I need to do is assign one of those files, one of those printers, to this particular layout. Now, I could just go into the plot dialog and do a one-time plot, but what if I know that I'm going to be working with this project for a while? I'm going to add additional sheets later on that use the same plotter or variations of that, the settings. Why not make it easy and create a file that I can use over and over again? So, a good rule of thumb is if you're going to do it more than once, really, create a template or something you can reuse. At least if you know you've done it 3 times, hey, make something you can save. If you can save it, do so. So I'm going to use Page Setup Manager here. And you'll see that what we have here is the A-sized and D-sized layout tabs. Note that right here we have this monochrome PDF D-size. This is a page setup that I've already saved in the drawing. I've actually assigned it to the layout right now. I'm going to go ahead and change this here. And what I'll do is I'll create a new page setup. And I'll go ahead and call this presentation. And I'll click OK. And maybe I might have put in their presentation D size. Okay, but what I'll do now is talk about what's going on here. We've already kind of gone into the properties of the DWG PDF. This is when I just double-clicked on it in the Windows Explorer. I've assigned the printer plotter. It's using the previous setting that I had. By default, it would have said none. I'll go ahead and leave the architectural D size, but note all the different paper sizes we have that we can choose from. And many of the drivers that you see, you'll actually have the same paper size in two different configurations, ArcD 36 by 24, ArcD 24 by 36. And this is only because some plotters really cannot distinguish the difference between the orientations of your file. So they've accommodated that by adding two versions of the same size. In a layout, you have display, extents, layout, and window, which you can choose for your plot area. Window allows me to just select an area that I want to plot that. Okay, and notice how that would appear on that sheet of paper. There's just a quick preview. We can do a full preview as well. Display will plot exactly what I see in front of me. Extents will plot to the edge of the border of anything tangible in here, just like using zoom extents would. Here in a layout environment, we also have the layout option, which goes to that printable area of the printer driver that I showed you, that hidden dashed line. Okay, in a model environment, this would be replaced with the term limits, which is a command that you would use to set a paper size. We can also adjust the plot offset here. Right now, because of this, the way this layout is set, I could going by layout, I can leave it there. I can also change it, maybe change the X factor this a bit, 0.25, to give a printable or bindable, binding area for your drawing set. So you can tweak that and adjust it that way. You may, with this particular title block, that's probably not going to work too well because of the size of it. But once you have your standards set up, you can reuse this stuff over and over. The hardest part about plotting is the initial setup. I'm going to go ahead and just change that back to 0 for right now. The plot scale. We're in model or in a layout right now. We've assigned scale factors, 1/4 inch equals a foot, 1/8 inch equals a foot, to the viewports. Now we can just plot this 1-to-1. We could change the scale factor, the plot scale, and be 1-to-2. You want to do a half size? If so, I mean, those options are all available here. 1-to-2. And I would then also recommend scaling your line weights. If you were just doing a check plot, and let's say you go to extents here, maybe you want to take this D-sized drawing and just put it on a C-sized sheet of paper or an A-sized, fit to paper would scrunch it onto that sheet of paper. So things to experiment with. I'm going to leave this on layout. Over here, for let's say you need to do a draft plot, you may want to uncheck things like plot object line weights. That would scale everything to 0 or the 0.010, which is the default of line weights in AutoCAD. You may want to uncheck plot with plot styles. Plot styles are up here. I'll go into those in a moment. And in some cases, you may need to plot paper space last, and in other cases, that's not necessary, but it is a good default to keep there. And it is usually well, lost my train of thought there. Sorry about that. But go ahead and uncheck some of these if you need to do a quick check plot. You can also change the orientation if for some reason that is deemed necessary. I'll get back to this here in a moment. Let's just kind of take a look at what this is going to look like. Right now it still has that monochrome plot style assigned to it, which is good. I'm going to hit exit though. I'm going to go ahead and change this to a, since it is presentation, I'm going to just use the AutoCAD CTB, which is your default line property settings. I could choose to display those as well. I'll show you that in a few moments. Let's do a preview now. And there it is in glorious NBC living color. The print preview, by the way, allows me to zoom in, zoom out, pan. I can also zoom window, zoom original, or exit, which I'll do. Escape would also exit you out of that. Now I'm going to go ahead and click OK here. And I have presentation. Now, in this layout right here, monochrome has already been signed to this. And the smart thing would have been to create a new layout first. I wasn't being smart. I'm going to go ahead and close this. It's the page setup is still there. What I'm going to do now is create a de-sized copy. So I'll select right mouse click over that tab, create a copy, and I'm going to tell it to move it to the end. And there's my de-size 2. Since the other one's monochrome and I've just double-clicked here, and I'm going to rename this to de-size presentation. And having done that, I'll go back into that layout, Page Setup Manager. I'll select the presentation page setup and apply it to this layout. So what I have now is a full color layout, and here I have a de-sized layout. We can't really tell that here. So what I'm going to do is go back into that Page Setup Manager one more time here. Whoops. And I'll go in there and modify this monochrome. And I'll say, hey, display that plot style. Click OK. And yes, any layout that is referenced by, that the page setup is being referenced by, I do want to assign it to that. I do click close here, and now I'm seeing this in black and white and this in color.
So Volker, we have a question about one of the settings that's in the Page Setup Manager. So if you want to go back in there. So the question is about one of the checkboxes to plot paper space last. And that's one that a lot of people maybe don't work with often. But someone asked for an example, and I have one in mind, if you don't mind.
Yeah, let me go in there and just show people what it is, and I will let you take control so I can take a drink.
All right, great. So plotting paper space last, if you want to think of a file where you maybe have an image inserted, and maybe that image is in model space, but then on your paper space, in your layout tab, you've created some objects in paper space. So maybe like a stamp, you want to put in like a block that's a stamp that tells that this is a preliminary or for review or 90%, something like that. When you go to print it, sometimes the image that was in model space will overlap on top of that paper space object, so your stamp won't display. So you can go in and toggle plot paper space last to make sure that everything in model space gets printed, and then whatever was in paper space will go over the top of that. Now, a lot of that you can control with display order, draw order in the file. You know, you pick an object, right click, and say bring it to the front, but that's an example of how that setting would apply.
Yeah, and that's a great example, and we see that with PDFs as well, since they are just raster images. Exactly. So, yeah, thank you, Christina, and that was a good question and a great example. as far as the answer goes on that. We're running short on time. I think we have a couple of polls left here, and we'll get to those, and then I'll conclude after that. So let's see.
First one. So what type of output do you use most often? And you can select more than one. And our digital output is coming out quite far ahead.
Yeah, that's,
and we do have, yeah.
That's interesting. Huh. Great. Yeah, we actually meant to run that one a little earlier, I think. But, hey, that is great feedback from you guys.
And then plot styles. And about half of the group is using our color-based, so CTBs, people are familiar with. But
yeah.
Nope is also coming in pretty high as well.
So the CTBs, I mean, we've, since AutoCAD, well, since back in the day, CTBs, this has always been the default is color-based on the AutoCAD color index. So that is not really that surprising. STBs are marvelous tool to use if you want to see different representations of your drawing in one drawing. But it's a pretty good topic by itself, the plot styles are. I did mean to go into those. We may have a minute left here where I can just kind of show you the settings before we go to a very important closing poll as well. So let me do that. Everybody still see my screen there, Christina? Or?
Yes.
Thank you. So in the plot dialog here, I can't believe I forgot to do this. I'm going to click on this edit button. And basically what a plot style does, it overrides the settings within your drawing. And it looks like most people are very familiar with this, but there are a few who it looks like are not. Okay, so basically you can set whatever colors, line weight, line type, and so forth in the layers dialog. And this is going to be the default for anything you plot. But if you use a plot style, it will override the settings within that have been made within that layer manager. And so maybe you want to plot everything. I mean, one of the examples here was monochrome. So, I mean, I could create my own monochrome plot style just by selecting all of these colors and then changing them to black. Or maybe I want magenta. I don't know why, but certainly wouldn't want yellow, right? Just doesn't look good on white. But either way, I mean, we can modify these settings here. In this case, I'll leave it on object color. One thing I'd like to point out is the dithering. Dithering is primarily for color. If you're going to do black and white plots, monochrome, depending on your plotter or printer, you may want to turn dithering off because what it does, it pixelates. It is used to merge colors to make them smoother transitions and actually make them a little more vibrant. But on a black and white plot, it actually, in some cases, will pixelate the drawing pretty bad. So dithering off is a good one to have for monochrome. You could also have grayscaling. You can also do a screening. Screening, I think, works best when working with STBs, but what it does, so I have a color reds, okay? I can screen that 50% and it'll be a lighter version of that color. It's pretty cool stuff working with that. You can override your line types here. So any line type within the drawing. Adaptive, it's kind of hard to explain. it was there for pin plotters, basically, allowing it to merge colors better. Line weight, so we can adjust the different line weights here. The line end style, can be butted or squared or rounded or diamond, so there's a little bit more flexibility than you would have just without plot styles. We can also have different join styles here. So this is also additional flexibility. A lot of these settings, although depending on your plotter, can be modified there as well on the hardware side. But here, this is, you aren't modifying a default for a plotter here. You're doing it just for the drawing that you assign this plot style to, or the layout, I should say. So some good options here, something to explore. Again, the help file will explain all these features and show you how to create your own plot styles as well. So those are plot styles. You can save and add your own or modify existing ones. That being said, Christina, any more questions? Or I know this is before. Sorry, that was too quick on my part. I know this has been very glossy. Okay, this entire overview here. That's because there is so much on printing. I've taught classes on printing at the least, really a half a day. I've seen some of them go into a day, depending on what a client or customer would want to know. So I do realize there's a lot more to printing or plotting, but if you aren't familiar with some of these features, you're now aware that they're there, and there are many resources available for you to find out more information about these features.
A few more questions, Volker.
Okay.
So one is actually probably a good suggestion for one of a future webinar, but it's the easiest way to plot multiple layout tabs all at once.
Well, there is a batch plot utility, but you can also, using the control key, select the layouts that you want to plot, then right mouse click over those layouts, and you can then publish them. So it will send all four of those to, all four. There's two of them there. It'll send all two of these that I have selected right now to my PDF driver. So that's one way, but there is also the publish command available here. And, whoops, sorry. Fingers are not working as they should. So batch plot is actually publish from the command line. So you're right, Christina. It could be another topic, though.
The other question is, you keep talking about this back in the day. For those of us that are more... what era was that? Yeah, so back in the day could be anything, really, but just to backtrack... One floppy disk? We will, we will. Let's put it this way. Dialogues for plotting were introduced in AutoCAD Release 12. Paperspace was released in AutoCAD Release 11. So in terms of plotting, back in the day would apply to those two products. How's that for a quick one? So that would have been release, 1990, 1989, 91? Excellent. And was drafting uphill both ways as well?
yeah, and our laptops, we needed cards.
Excellent. So probably a good time for the last couple of polls.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
So I'll launch the one about what would you like to see in more detail in a future webinar? So we, as Volker said, we glossed over a lot of topics all at once, but what's the one thing that you'd like to really dig into? And a lot of feedback coming in really quick on this one.
And pretty even.
Yeah, pretty even. Page setups and plot styles are edging out a little bit, but it looks like, for the most part, everybody wants to see each topic getting its own future webinar.
Well, the customer is always right.
Absolutely.
So,
And
wow, that is great. That's great feedback, and I think that's what we're going to do then. We're going to go ahead. We've got a couple of, a few more webinars scheduled before then. I don't want to throw people for a loop by interjecting new ones, but we will definitely put those on the board. Plotting is a big topic, and we use it every day, right? Got to get that project out, whether it's digital or hard copy. So I will be happy to accommodate, and if I'm not doing it, Christina will.
excellent. All right, so we have one final poll that I'm going to launch, and we just want to know, was this session helpful?
Fair enough. Well, for those who this wasn't helpful for, I'm sorry. I wish it were. I hope you'll join us for a future session, which might go more into detail on those items you were actually wanting to hear more about. For those who this was definitely helpful for, I'm really glad, and I hope you will also attend the future webinars, and we will explore some of these topics. In fact, all the ones we mentioned we'll explore in further detail. And for those with the somewhat response, I'm glad we were somewhat helpful with a glossy overview. We do know your time's valuable, so I'm not taking any of that lightly. It is good feedback. Please feel free to leave feedback on our feedback page, and just briefly, Christina will be pasting that, if she hasn't already, into the chat window. I'm going to go ahead and just show you that website right now. And also our upcoming webinar, which is Troubleshooting 101. And it's basically troubleshooting maybe installation issues or corruption of the application. For what it's worth, Troubleshooting 101 will be followed up by Troubleshooting 102, which is working with drawing data corruption. So a couple of good troubleshooting sessions coming up. Again, I appreciate your time, and I thank Christina for assisting today.
Thank you for having me.
And we wish you all a great day and a great and productive day. We hope to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you.